welcome everybody back to another episode of the Free Agent Podcast. Today, I'm lucky. I'm joined by not one, but two guests. We've got Michael Plomner, who's a customer success executive who specializes in strategy, customer growth, and building the systems that drive predictable renewals and expansion. He's led global teams from early startups through publicly traded companies and focuses on helping leaders deliver a consistent and meaningful customer experience at every stage of growth. With Michael, we've got Ari Billauer, an operations leader with deep experience in customer success, finance, and the mechanics of running a post-sales organization day to day. He has built and led support services and success teams and brings a strong business mindset to capacity planning, forecasting, and unit economics. And so what's really interesting about this is Michael and Ari are actually a tag team, and they've worked side by side for 20 plus years. And they run a company called RPS Consultants, where they plug into SaaS companies as a two-person fractional leadership team. Michael leading the strategy front and Ari leading the operation side. And together they build a post-sales engine, install the cadence reporting, and make customer success a reliable source of revenue instead of a reactive function. So quite the intro, guys. Thanks for joining. Super happy to have you on.
We're excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so customer success is one of those functions that it's near and dear to heart for a myriad of reasons, which we'll get into. And also, too, I think the function itself could act as a full-time resource within an organization, but also as a fractional entity or even a consulting entity. And so, obviously, we're here to talk about kind of the latter two camps. But I think it's such an interesting use case, especially as we've kind of experienced this bit of a downturn in the tech sector in general, where it's net new business reigns supreme, and oftentimes the customer can be the forgotten soul. But thanks for joining, guys. Really appreciate it. So jumping in, how the two of you actually get started in customer success? I mean, you've been working together for quite some time, but talk to me a little bit about the origin story.
You got it, Michael. All right, I'll go ahead. So I've known Michael for a number of years, and I remember very clearly Michael reached out to me and he asked me if I wanted to come join him at a specific company, and I promptly said no. He was talking about dealing with customers, a lot of travel, a lot of work with customers, and I was really happy in IT where I was working. You get to stay one place behind one desk, and the customers are not quite an afterthought in IT, but they're not always the focus.
Sure.
And Michael's convinced me. He's like, "No, come on board, man. It'll be fun. It'll be great." So I went down. I heard what he had said. It was really, really compelling. In IT where I was at, you have a great impact on the company, but it's really internal and it's viewed as a cost center, and it kind of sucks. Michael was really, really persuasive about having me join where he was at, and I really got to see how being in the customer success side, dealing with the customers, being in a revenue generating part of the business, both is treated differently, and it's just incredibly rewarding. You really get to have an impact on companies and how they adopt your products, how they use it, and you get to have this impact across a wide variety of companies and businesses, helping them, succeed. It was just so much fun, and I've never looked back.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
I would add to that the being in front in the customer success or in the post sales. At the time when we started doing this, it was more about professional services and just in delivery in general. But it was an opportunity to stand in front of the customer and really understand what it is that we were there to do. It was more purposeful than getting an email system up and running, right? Or a file sharing system working, giving permissions. But it was saying, I'm part of the company, and we're doing something that has a purpose. The company has a mission. And in this particular case, when we started doing this, the mission was to deliver broadcast television through satellite and through cable operators, but really to bring and inform and educate people globally. And being part of that mission was exciting. And then building that solution for those customers was really thrilling.
Yeah, super interesting. When you can find meaning and purpose with your work, it becomes a hell of a lot more exciting and rewarding personally. And far too often, I've found that companies, especially large companies, forget about the mission at hand, which is literally about the customer and the customer's drive, business stickiness, and ultimately success. And It's easy to lose track of that when you're part of the machine. So how did you guys know that it was time to jump out of corporate America and hang a shingle as RPS?
Well, Ari and I have been working for many years with hypergrowth startups, and we've done and worked with a number of them, building up our experience and our toolkit throughout the entire post-sales journey. Every company is a little bit different in its culture and its mission, and where you draw the lines of the responsibilities. But in fact, the discipline is the same, essentially, of ensuring customer retention, that they're seeing the value of the product, identifying growth opportunities, and capitalizing on that to help them be successful, both the company
Sure.
and business that you're delivering to. And we saw this, and we said, let's bring this value to the startups, because what we find and what we found generally is that companies don't set their foundations right from the start. Customer success is typically, the customer experience is an afterthought for a number of reasons that we can go into. And companies end up becoming the victims of their own success, where they have a lot of sales and not an adequate way to be able to retain and then capitalize on the business that they won. And with the fractional engagement, we were able to bring that discipline and that methodology based on years of experience to companies that wouldn't typically have access to it that early in their life cycle. So we said, let's do that. And it's been a lot of fun helping founding CEOs be able to make sure that they retain and drive growth from the business that they've won in the early stages of their startup journey.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, I've been in the fractional space for over 8 years, and that's kind of what we aspire to do, is bring kind of that big business acumen and structure and infrastructure, but down to kind of a smaller scale with companies, so they can kind of build some of those best practices from go. Versus, I imagine a lot of times you get the call, it's like customer attrition's through the roof. Keep customers happy. We're bringing them in. They're leaving faster than we're able to bring them in.
Yeah.
You can kind of put some of the foundational things in place before that happens. Then obviously it's a win for the company. And so I think that's a good segue into some more tactical questions and customer success at large. So, I've had a couple of different customer success practitioners on my podcast, and one of the first questions that I asked out of the gate is, what's your definition of customer success? What does that mean to you? We got two brains. Might as well hear two different definitions.
Yeah, I mean, look, customer success, it's an interesting thing. I mean, depending on how you look at it, you can get a lot of different answers. But to me, it's really making sure that your customer team, your customers, are successful in using the product. Like, it's one of those very simple things that is in the name, that they're really getting the use that they paid for. They really understand what they're getting, and they're happy that their business needs are being met. Right? From the company perspective, if you want to flip it a little bit, you definitely want to be talking about, seeing value, making sure the customers see that you get retention and growth, that they're going to drive renewal, and you can find opportunities to present more services and present more value to the customers. But bottom line, it's really about keeping the customer central and focused and making sure that they are happy, because cut behind all the jargon, cut behind all the metrics. If the people who are paying for your products and or services aren't using them, aren't enjoying them, they're just not going to come back. And that's what you're there to do.
Friends too, right?
What?
They're going to tell their friends as well.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Like, there's that growth engine. You want to turn your customers into advocates, and you want them to be able to go out there and say, oh my God, I had this great experience. You've got to try this company. Like, that is the ultimate win, right? When you can turn your customers into advocates. And there are all the metrics, obviously, about renewal, and not to be ignored. But if you can build advocacy, you've hit the right set of notes.
Yeah. And what I would add to that, I would say in kind of in parallel, one of the things in our approach is looking at customer success as the tip of the spear, the one that is really accountable for that end-to-end customer experience with the company's product or services that they're delivering. Now, where it sits in the organization, whether it's part of the sales engine or whether it's its own operations or its own standalone unit, is just a matter again of a definition of responsibility for the ownership of the account. But owning the customer experience, ensuring that everything that happens after the customer has purchased the product or services, that they are leveraging those services, that they are using those services, that they are seeing that they're getting the value out of the product. And when product falls apart or there are issues, that you're there to help them restore value. That is something that when we go to an organization, we look at the customer success team as the one that is accountable for ensuring that that customer experience end to end is a fluid, smooth, delightful experience.
No, I love that. And I found too, like the astute companies that we work with that are like maybe Series A, Series B, customer success is part of their toolkit, right? So it's like maybe it's CRO or head of sales, and maybe it's some kind of functional salespeople as well. But in parallel with that, it's kind of that account management team, the customer success team to round out that whole sales function.
Yeah.
Which is, I feel like, we deviated from that last couple of years, but it seems to be kind of coming back, which is great.
Yeah.
You mentioned one thing that I'm going to ask you about specifically about CS. Where, in your opinion, for either of you, where should CS, customer success, sit and reside within an organization? Is it sales? Is it sales and marketing? Is it a standalone entity? Do you report to the COO?
So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, Ari, I'm gonna take that.
In here. Let's have a.
So I would say that it really depends on the company's culture. The bottom line is that whether or not you're going to make your customer success team carry some sort of quota on renewals, or you're going to measure them on dollar-based net retention or GRR, bottom line, they are accountable for ensuring that the customers are getting those value, that they identify those growth opportunities. So if they're not working directly, or if, in some organizations we've seen the customer success manager takes ownership of the account after the sale, and the sales team focuses on being hunters, and the customer success managers are the farmers. And that's fine. I mean, that's an effective way, as long as you set up your incentive structure to promote that behavior. That's great, right? You can also separate that out a little bit, where your account manager, a lot of places do this, the account manager owns the account from the beginning all the way through the entire time that account is active with the customer. But the customer success manager is there making sure that that customer is seeing value. They're partnering with the account manager, identifying new opportunities, vetting them, qualifying them, and handing them back to the account manager, and they work in partnership. So whether or not you separate the tasks,
sure,
as long as you define it, it can fit in either way, whether it's out in operations. And of course, get the right incentive structures to drive the behavior from all the individuals on the team to work effectively together to the goal.
Yeah, I actually incentivize properly, because I totally agree. Even marketing, that's a wormhole we don't want to go down. But
that's a whole good podcast to do on incentives.
Whole good podcast episode. But I definitely agree on making sure the incentives are right, because that drives the appropriate behavior. Generally, it can also drive very negative behavior.
Sure, we've seen that. We've seen that some organizations, when they don't, I've seen organizations forget to incentivize renewal or disincentivize renewals in the account team, and things don't move forward. So yes, setting up your incentives is critical in making sure you have an effective team working together.
Which is interesting, because when you think about the structure, one of the things I do like to see is having the CRO have some metric or some incentive on the customer success team, because that makes the sales team, with all their skill, make sure that they sell something that can actually be delivered. Right? If sales does, sell something, and I've seen this, throw it over the fence and say, you figure out how to actually make the customer happy, and they have no incentive to ensure customer satisfaction, customer happiness, they'll promise the moon. And why not, right? But having those incentives aligned, so that your sales team knows that whatever they sell actually has to get delivered, making sure that the customer is going to be retained, that's golden. Making sure those incentives are in step.
Yeah, it can also alleviate kind of I did my job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So customer success would kind of define the meaning, but how can that differ for, a 2 to 10 million ARR software company, versus a 10 to 30 million, and how would your approach change between those different stages of growth?
So for 2 to 10, I think it's really important to understand what that company looks like. 2 to 10, you're imagining a company, at least I am, that has developed a product, has an initial product launch, and they are fighting like crazy to get sales and logos. And that's their primary concern, is making sure their product is fit for market and then chasing and hunting down their market share. They may have a VC or two that they're working with, or seed funds, or whatever it is. They have some equity. Um, and they're heavily focusing, heavily incentivized to drive the market, to drive new sales. And if there is any customer success at this point, it's going to be very white glove, like they won that first customer, their first customers. The developers might be providing support. There is not really a holistic view. And at that point, it's really important to start focusing on foundations. And that's what we would step in to work with a company to do, is help them start thinking about customer success as a discipline, help them start thinking about the holistic customer experience, how to make it work, how to make it scale. And this allows you to solve that problem of bringing in A-level talent to solve that fractionally and bring in technical folks to implement. So you can get the best of both worlds in that picture.
Yeah.
When you slide up to 10 to 30, you're looking at a different animal. You're looking at a company in hyper growth. They've hit the magic sauce, their product's right, they're exploding in the market, and their sales are just taking off, and it's amazing. And all of a sudden, they find themselves behind that 8 ball of, oh my God, we have all these customers. What do we do now? Right? It's like the best problem you can have, but it is a problem that needs to get solved. And at this point, you try to bring in the discipline, because at this point, it's either hiring up too many people, like you're going to just hire in like crazy to try and field all the demand, or you're dealing reactively, like problems are happening and you can't stay on top of it. By investing in customer success properly, you can start to keep your finger on the pulse. You can start to see what's going on. You can start to predict and control the customer's experience so that it's positive, so that you're driving your renewals. You're not fighting fires all the time, and how to scale that accordingly without breaking the bank in 10 to 30 and going forward, 30 plus.
Yeah. Yeah, boy, you said it, Ari. I think that really covered everything. Look, Beau, one of the things that we had done in our career was we were usually brought in those companies that were essentially at the stage of the 10 to 30 or even higher, where they were victims of their own success, right? As Ari was describing, overwhelmed, not managing the risks, not having a good finger on the pulse of the customer engagement. And we had to scramble and help those organizations put that discipline in place to get ahead of, they were so far behind the 8 ball, to just run alongside it and then eventually get ahead of it. And we've done that, and it's effective. And for sure, that is something that you can't just abandon, and you got to bring in professionals to do that. And fortunately, we worked in a bunch of companies that had done that. But we really were excited about taking this experience and going to those smaller, the 2 to 10 companies, by helping them set those foundations right from the start. And that by providing a fractional engagement allows us to be able to provide that value at a cost that's appropriate for those types of companies and where they are in their growth stage.
So you could also avoid the fire drill that could happen at that 10 to 30, where, much to Ari's point, you've got a product, you're in hyper growth, but you don't know what you're doing. One follow-up question, kind of in that vein. Obviously, I would imagine kind of that 2 to 10. There's no customer success function generally within an organization. You guys kind of come in and provide the infrastructure, but with that 10 to 30, is there typically, when you guys get engaged, is there typically maybe figurehead over customer success, or maybe the machine is broken and you're brought in as an overlay to kind of right the ship and fix, or could it be all of the above?
It's a little bit of it's most of those things. Usually you have some C-level person that was either in sales or in operations that's over and in charge of it. They've got other functions that are required, that they really require their time, and they need someone to just fix this problem. And usually the folks in the post-sales organization at that 10 to 30 are kind of a jack of all trades type positions. Maybe they call themselves some solution architects or onboarding type people, and maybe they have some support people. Maybe they have TAMs. Maybe they have this customer success, but the role, that the titles that they have don't align to any defined set of expectations. It's kind of like when my kids were little and played soccer, and they were, all of them would be running after the ball on the field, and that was how it was essentially how we see a lot of those companies functioning. There's an issue or a high value strategic customer, and everybody is engaged trying to do their best to be able to solve that problem. So we come in and provide that structure.
And the typical executive sponsor, CRO, or maybe president of the company, president of the division.
I mean, typically CRO and CEO or founder are the people who reach out to us. What we've seen in that soccer analogy is it's normally the CRO who got tasked with this, and CROs, especially in the startup space, tend to be more about sales than about retention. Not always, but that tends to be the focus, and again, rightfully so. So they get overwhelmed when all of a sudden they have to deal with this also, and they need help.
I think the founders and CROs also try to take that off their plate. I had a conversation yesterday with a $30 million ARR company. They're bringing in our CRO, but now they're concerned basically that having marketing, customer success, and all these functions are too much. So they're thinking about taking some of those off their plate with leveraging a fractional CMO, maybe customer success, et cetera. So the use case makes sense, especially if you don't want to overwhelm somebody who's new. So if customer success is one of those disciplines that most folks can agree does drive long-term growth and outcomes, why does it typically take a backseat to sales and marketing in the early stages? And just to kind of tee this up further, I have a lot of conversations with companies where there needs a CRO, very senior salespeople, and it's all about net new business all the time. And when I'm talking to founders, typically it's like, the recurring revenue or the existing customers, almost an afterthought. And I don't understand it. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about incentives before, and I think incentives play everything into this. When you're a new company, when you're starting up, your incentive is to develop your product and sell. The VCs you're talking to are pushing new logos and growth. And that's what everyone is hyper-focused on is, developing your product, marketing, sales. Let's get the product ready enough, get it out the door and get sales. Let's close deals. And you know what? The VCs aren't wrong, right? It's really important to get customers, because if you don't have customers, you can't keep customers, right? So that is definitely step one. What happens though is people get blinded by those metrics, and you don't look at the whole picture the day after. What are we going to do? Because it's a tomorrow problem. It's like day two. We've sold something, now what? And VCs are great, but they can really blind you to this fact that you've got to take a more holistic view, right? You got to not only look at sales, you got to look at retention. Not only do you have to look at retention, you're going to start looking at, your bottom line, or your unit economics make sense. Your top line growth, bottom line growth. It's that business view that kind of gets a little blurry at the very beginning because you're too focused on the tree to see the forest. And that's kind of what happens as the companies get a little bit bigger, a little bit more mature. You start to realize, wait a minute, I need to look at the bigger picture. I need to look at all these facets. And that's when you see customer success kind of get more focus and more need.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I think one of the things that also happens there, and it's normal, is in the early stages, you think you've got a great idea, but that's only really validated through sales, right? And that's why there is so much hyper focus on that. And then there's a little bit of, well, if they already see the value so much that they took the plunge and they purchased the product, then I don't really have to worry about them as existing customers, because of course they see the value. We sold it to them, right? They bought it, right? So that thought, and again, I know subscriptions aren't new, but SaaS is, it's years. I mean, it's been 10 years now or so, 7 to 10 years that SaaS has been the major play, but that flywheel really needs to be given attention in a way. It's not a discipline that's really grown up from the start of our industry. So this is kind of like a bolt-on
Right.
that you had to start thinking about as part of the engagement. But I mean, it's very natural
Yeah.
for, it's a street fight at the beginning, and you got to demonstrate your value, and that makes a lot of sense. That's
It's
why
also easy to get caught up in vanity metrics and, net new customer acquisition, revenue, top line revenue, et cetera.
I mean, the other thing, just a note on that, is renewal doesn't show up till a year later.
Yeah.
Like, mostly you have an annual contract, you close the contract, you only get kicked in the teeth a year later when all of a sudden people stop renewing.
Right. They just could continue to chase it, chase the net new. So shifting gears slightly, let's hone in on AI a little bit. Obviously, it's a buzz. Maybe we're in a bubble. Maybe we're not in a bubble. But I do feel like it's happening. I use it every day. It has impacted my life in good ways and also bad ways. Bad way, of course, it's harder to get in front of the right customers now because people are inundated, et cetera. But how do you see kind of, your discipline and customer success in particular being impacted by AI? I mean, what implications do you foresee kind of in the short, medium, and maybe longer term?
we get this question a lot. How are we going to leverage AI? Because everyone's excited about it.
And terrified.
What's that? And terrified.
Yeah. Most, I think there's the old guard is terrified. I'm indifferent. Let's just see what happens. I can't stop the wave.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It is here. And it is not, I don't believe that it's going anywhere. It's not a fad. I do believe that we need to look at AI as a tool, as an augmenter, as a way of helping drive efficiency. And we see this with the customers that we work with. We help educate them and help them leverage AI in their regular engagements. But it's at the end of the day, customer success is about building trust, becoming a trusted advisor and helping identify growth opportunities within the company's organization. And you really do need to do that with a human engagement. Now, I know that there are on the lower side of the tier of your customer base, the lower tiers in your customer base, AI can help kind of close that gap in an efficient way. And of course, absolutely leverage it.
Right.
For your top tier customers and your focus, it's an augmenter. It's a tool that will help you drive a consistent message, drive that message efficiently. Absolutely be leveraging it for sure. Don't recede from it. Don't run away from it. Don't be terrified. I did say embrace it, and we found a lot of success with that. The other question that I get a lot is with analytics. Can we leverage analytics? Now that's interesting. That's always been, and Ari will laugh at me on this one because he's the big BI guy. And what he always says is everyone's like, give me BI, give me BI. He's like, but you're not even asking the right questions. Yeah. And that's the same thing with AI and analytics. We found a lot of companies are not even doing the bare minimum essential in being able to measure customer health. They do maybe CSAT, and that's about it. They're not looking for usage. They're not looking for engagement. They're looking at, across, a number of different metrics. So they're not even asking the right questions, starting to try to throw AI solution on top to start providing some sort of insight isn't going to really deliver the value until you actually start asking the right kind of questions and properly, proactively measuring customer health.
Interesting, but I would imagine that would be a great use case for AI because everybody's sitting on a bunch of data, and how do you kind of make, insights from that data that makes sense? And
Absolutely.
I think a good point about the people and needing the human, and my business is pretty similar in that regard, where everybody's freaking out about the talent side, and full-time, fractional, interim, whatever. You need a human involved, in my opinion, and AI can help sift through, can help make recommendations and parallels. But ultimately, I tend to definitely agree with you that, it's going to be very difficult to dislodge the human when you're talking about emotions and interactions. And, we use it to augment our business, but I don't foresee it disrupting our business. So.
Yeah, at the end of the day, yes, you're aligning business incentives and interests, right? You've got a product to sell that solves a business need that customer has and the company has. But you're talking with an individual, and that individual has their own incentive structure,
Yeah.
whatever it is that's driving them to make a decision. And you need to understand that and be able to address that. And that will be beyond the numbers as well. They'll be aligned to, tangential to, but they won't necessarily be reflected directly in the product's execution.
No, totally. And Ari, maybe you have an opinion on that as well. But to tie that off, I will literally sit on the phone for 30 minutes to get a human versus spending 5 minutes with a bot. And
Yeah.
I don't see that changing in my lifetime. I'm just not going to do it.
No, I mean, for very, very simple things, the bots can do it. For any real interaction, any real problem, it's not even close. You need to speak to a person. You need to be heard and understood. And once that person is heard and understood, they can help and they can really listen to your issues and provide a solution.
And robots don't empathize, right? Sometimes you just need a little empathy, you know? So finally, guys, and really appreciate the conversation and the time. One of the things that I like to do with the podcast is tactical insights. Like what could a $2 to $10 million ARR company do tomorrow to have more of a keen eye on CS, assuming they don't have the infrastructure, maybe they haven't even thought about it being injected into their business. But what could they do tomorrow to have a better kind of vision and focus on their customers?
Yeah. So I'd say that's a really great question. The 2 to 10 kind of ties into what we just said a moment ago. It's really listen, understand your customer's business needs, right? You sell a product that does something. It provides cybersecurity. It does, backups, whatever it does that, whatever you do and you do really well, you got to listen to what the customer needs from you. What problem are they trying to solve? And it's different customer to customer. How you build up, how you organize, how you answer that question, that comes next. But the one thing you could really do, everyone says their customer first, but few really ask the customers what they need. What it is that you're trying to accomplish with our products and services, what is your goal, and have that permeate your entire organization so everyone understands what it is that this particular customer is trying to do. And when you're talking to them from support, from the dev team, whatever it is, you really understand that, you can provide really great guidance and make sure they have an amazing time with your product and service. And then we'll become those ambassadors. We'll become people that say, oh my God, I dealt with this company. They were listening. They heard what I had to say. They helped my problem. They were amazing. I wish every company was like this, and become that ambassador to you. But the first step is really just asking, what are you trying to do? How can we help?
It's interesting too, how that can also impact how you deliver, right? Is having those discussions with your customers on what went well, what didn't go well, where would you change? And we've done that in our own business as to how to kind of optimize their experience. And that ends up in referrals and kind of helps the entire engine. So
Yeah.
We had one of our recent new customers came to us, and it was an interesting story that he told us. He said, we had our product was working. It was out there. There was some support issue, and they went and jumped on the call. And he, I think he was the COO of the company. He came in and he said, you know what, I want to just sit on the call and listen to what's going on. And it was, I think, a couple of months before the renewal was up. And there was this particular support case, and he's sitting on the call and he's listening to the guys talk. And the technical people had a great rapport. They're working on it. They solved the problem. Yeah, they're all good. And the COO asked the question. So, the renewal is up in 2 months. Are you guys going to be renewing with us? And they're like, oh, no, we're not doing that. It's like, but the product's working. It's like, yeah, but it's not really delivering the features and the functionality that meets our business needs. And he was surprised that here it was 10 months into this relationship and technically been working right, but not really addressing the business needs. So that's where, as Ari was saying, you got to listen. A lot of this at this stage, at the 2 to 10, you got technical people that are making sure that the product is installed and working or deployed or onboarded. But if you're not really attuned to what the customer's problem is and making sure that they see the value and getting that value, then you're losing your renewals, and you're like a bucket, putting in new, you got a huge hole at the bottom. You're just losing everything out the bottom.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find a lot of companies as well that 2 to 10 where they've got product market fit or they had it. and then they lose it. And I think they lose it oftentimes because they're not close with their customers and getting that feedback loop on how they can continue to kind of enhance their product, enhance their service, or where the new issues are coming down the pipe. So, gentlemen, this was fun. I appreciate it. Where can people find more about each of you as well as RPS?
You can catch us at rps.cx. Repeatable, predictable, scalable. That's what we deliver. So you can connect over there. You can book a meeting with us, send us an email, and we're happy to consult.
Awesome. We'll add a link to the podcast as well and put in the show notes. So, gentlemen, really appreciate the time. Sincerely, thank you.
Thank you, Beau.